Sit back, relax, and welcome to Reading Hours. Today's book is The Home and the World by Rabindranath Tagore. Please let us know in the comments from where you are watching, or if there is a book you want us to summarize in future. The Home and the World original Bengali title, Ger Bear, is one of Rabindranath Tagore's most profound and politically charged novels, first published in 1916. Tagore, a Nobel laureate in literature, uses this novel to explore the complex interplay between personal lives and the sweeping forces of nationalism, colonialism, and cultural identity during the early 20th century in British-ruled India, set against the backdrop of the Swadeshi movement, which advocated for the boycott of British goods and a revival of Indian pride. The Home and the World delicately portrays the ideological and emotional conflicts that arise when tradition, modernity, and political fervor collide. The novel is unique for its narrative style, employing three distinct perspectives: Nikhil, the liberal and philosophical zamindar; Bimala, his wife, who undergoes a transformation; and Sandip, the charismatic nationalist leader. Through their intertwined lives, Tagore examines the tensions between the public and private spheres, the allure and dangers of fanatic nationalism, and the role of women within both society and political movements. It is both a psychological drama and a socio-political commentary, questioning the true meaning of patriotism and the cost of blind allegiance. As we delve into this intricate tale, we will witness Bimala's journey from the seclusion of her domestic world to the tumultuous political arena, and the moral dilemmas that challenge all three protagonists. The narrative is rich with symbolism, emotional depth, and philosophical inquiry, making it an enduring classic that continues to resonate with readers worldwide. The morning air was thick with the scent of jasmine, and the distant echo of temple bells as Bimala, a young Bengali woman of refined upbringing, sat quietly by the window of the old zamindar's house. The large, sprawling mansion in rural Bengal was her home, a place steeped in tradition, yet increasingly caught in the currents of change. Her world had always been the domestic sphere, a space defined by the rhythms of household duties, quiet reflection, and the gentle presence of her husband, Nikhil. Nikhil was a man of calm dignity and enlightened views, a zamindar who owned vast tracts of land. He was well educated and deeply philosophical, embodying a progressive spirit that balanced reverence for tradition with openness to reform. Despite his status, Nikhil lived modestly and valued moral integrity above all else. His wife, Bimala, admired him quietly from a distance, her feelings a mixture of respect and the soft yearning that accompanies a life lived within defined boundaries. Yet, Bimala's existence was about to be disrupted. The country around them was changing rapidly. The Swadeshi movement had taken hold in Bengal, fueled by the call to boycott British goods and revive indigenous industry. Political meetings, fiery speeches, and fervent nationalism had begun to seep into even the quiet corners of rural life. For Bimala, who until now had been shielded from the outside world's turmoil, these forces would soon become impossible to ignore. The story opens with Nikhil returning home from a journey to the city. He speaks softly about the political unrest, urging caution and reason. His views are moderate. He believes in patriotism, but fears fanaticism and violence. Bimala listens with curiosity, but also with a stirring inside, a subtle desire for something beyond the safe confines of her home. Her world is still circumscribed by the traditional roles prescribed for women, but the promise of engagement with the larger world awakens in her a flicker of hope and intrigue. Enter Sandip, a charismatic and passionate leader of the nationalist cause. Sandip is everything Nikhil is not. Where Nikhil is calm and measured, Sandip is fiery and impulsive. He preaches unyielding patriotism and a rejection of all things colonial. His speeches, filled with emotion and rhetoric, captivate many, including Bimala. His presence is magnetic, his ideals intoxicating. Sandip represents the radical edge of the Swadeshi movement, the call to action that stirs both hope and danger. Bimala, torn between the serene wisdom of Nikhil and the burning zeal of Sandip, begins to feel a complex awakening. Her husband's caution seems almost passive in comparison to Sandip's bold vision. Yet, she cannot deny the warmth and excitement that Sandip's ideals ignite within her. For the first time, Bimala senses that her life could mean more than silent devotion. She contemplates a role in the world outside the home. The tension between these two men and the ideological battle they represent forms the backdrop against which Bimala's story unfolds. The home, the traditional sanctuary, stands in contrast to the world, the political battlefield. Bimala's journey will navigate this chasm, challenging her loyalties, beliefs, and identity. As the Swadeshi movement intensifies, so too does the complexity of the relationships. Bimala finds herself drawn into Sandip's sphere, attending political meetings and discussions, her mind and heart opening to ideas she had never encountered. Yet beneath the surface, doubt begins to grow. Sandip's rhetoric sometimes slips into manipulation, and his nationalism veers toward intolerance and aggression. Meanwhile, Nikhil's quiet strength and reason offer a steady anchor, a reminder of the values Bimala was raised to cherish. This opening chapter sets the stage for a tale of love, politics, and self-discovery, framed by the tumult of colonial India's fight for independence. Tagore's narrative invites the reader to explore the delicate balance between idealism and pragmatism, between personal desire and public duty. Bimala's awakening is not just political, but deeply personal, a quest for identity in a world torn between the home and the larger forces shaping the nation's future. The home and the world is more than a political allegory. It is a deeply human story about the power of ideas, the risks of fanaticism, and the role of women as both participants and symbols in the nationalist movement. In the chapters ahead, we will see how Bimala's choices challenge the very foundations of her life and force all three characters to confront the costs of their convictions. The days that followed were filled with an uneasy quiet at the Zamindar's house. Bimala moved through the rooms with a restless heart, her thoughts a swirling storm of conflicting emotions. The familiar walls of the old mansion, once a sanctuary of comfort and tradition, now seemed to close in on her, suffocating and confining. Outside, the air was charged with the fervor of the Swadeshi movement, meetings in village squares, songs of revolt, and impassioned speeches that stirred the crowds. Inside, Bimala wrestled with a growing desire to understand, to be part of something larger than her domestic world. her husband Nikhil remained a steady presence, calm and composed, embodying a quiet strength that had always grounded her. He spoke often of balance, of reason over passion, urging her to find peace in the home, in the values they shared. But Nikhil's vision of patriotism was tempered by caution. He believed that true love for one's country must not lead to violence or hatred. His ideas, though noble, seemed distant to Bimala now, as if spoken from a place untouched by the restless energy that Sandip embodied. Sandip's arrival at the Zamindar's estate had stirred more than political debate. It had ignited something within Bimala herself. Sandip was everything Nikhil was not: bold, fiery, and uncompromising. His speeches were thunderous calls to action, demanding sacrifice and fierce loyalty to the motherland. To him, patriotism was not just a duty, but a sacred fire that consumed all doubts and fears. His charisma drew many followers, including Bimala, who found herself increasingly captivated by his vision. Bimala's transformation was subtle but profound. At first, it was merely curiosity that pulled her towards Sandip's world, a world of ideas and purpose far beyond her usual boundaries. She began to attend political meetings held in secret gatherings, places where men and women debated the future of India. There, she encountered voices filled with hope and anger, despair and determination. The words resonated deeply within her, awakening a sense of agency she had never known. Yet, her involvement also brought confusion and inner conflict. Sandip's rhetoric, while inspiring, often glossed over the complexities and moral ambiguities of the struggle. His language painted the British as cruel oppressors, and the Indian cause as a holy war demanding total allegiance. Bimala found herself swept up in the passion, but beneath the surface, a nagging doubt lingered. Was the fiery nationalism Sandip preached truly the path to freedom, or did it risk destroying the very soul of the nation? Nikhil watched Bimala's growing involvement with concern, but chose not to confront her directly. His love for her was deep, but he feared that a battle of wills would only drive a wedge between them. Instead, he tried to embody the principles he believed in: patience, respect, and steadfastness, hoping that Bimala would find her way back to the values of compassion and reason. He believed that true patriotism could not be divorced from humanity. Meanwhile, Sandip's influence grew stronger. He was not just a political leader, but a symbol of the revolutionary spirit sweeping Bengal. His speeches ignited crowds, and his presence was electric. Yet, behind the public facade, Sandip was a man of contradictions. His passionate ideals sometimes masked a ruthless ambition. He was willing to manipulate emotions, play on fears, and use charm to bend others to his cause. For him, the ends justified the means, and personal relationships were often secondary to political goals. Bimala's relationship with Sandip deepened beyond politics. She found in him a reflection of the excitement and purpose she craved, a stark contrast to the quiet steadiness of her husband. This emotional entanglement further complicated her inner turmoil. The boundaries between duty and desire blurred as she struggled to reconcile her love for Nikhil with the intoxicating allure of Sandip's revolutionary fire. Her transformation was not just political or emotional, but spiritual. Bimala began to question her own identity, her role as a woman in a society caught between tradition and change. The home, once her entire world, seemed to shrink as the vastness of the political struggle loomed larger. She wrestled with feelings of guilt and shame for stepping beyond the prescribed limits, yet also with pride and empowerment for embracing a new path. The house itself seemed to mirror Bimala's shifting world. The quiet rooms, filled with memories of a simpler life, were contrasted with the growing noise of political meetings and whispered conversations. Servants and relatives watched the changes with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. The Zamindar's estate was no longer just a home. It had become a microcosm of the wider conflicts tearing through Indian society. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and cast long shadows across the courtyard, Bimala sat alone, reflecting on the path she had chosen. She thought of Nikhil's calm wisdom and Sandip's fiery zeal, of the competing visions of patriotism that pulled her heart in opposite directions. She realized that her journey was not just about politics, but about finding her own voice, her own place in a world that demanded so much from its women. This realization was both liberating and terrifying. To embrace Sandip's world meant risking everything: her marriage, her reputation, even her sense of self. Yet to retreat into the safety of the home felt like surrendering her newfound strength and awareness. Bimala stood at a crossroads, aware that the choices she made would define not only her own destiny, but the future of those she loved. As the movement outside grew more intense, so did the personal stakes. The novel's tension escalates as the political passions threaten to overwhelm the fragile bonds within the household. Tagore's portrayal of these intertwined struggles highlights the complexity of human emotions in times of upheaval. Patriotism is not a simple banner to rally under. It is a force that can inspire heroism and cruelty alike, that can unite and divide. In this unfolding drama, Bimala's awakening symbolizes the broader awakening of India itself, a nation caught between the home's comforting traditions and the world's call for change. Her story is one of courage and vulnerability, of love and betrayal, set against the powerful currents of history. Through her eyes, readers glimpse the challenges faced by those who seek to navigate the difficult path between loyalty to the past and hope for the future. The coming chapters promise to delve deeper into these conflicts, revealing the consequences of choices made in the heat of passion and the quiet moments of reflection. Bimala's journey is far from over, and the question remains: can the home and the world ever truly coexist? Or are they destined to collide in a storm that will reshape everything? As the days wore on, the tension between the private and public spheres intensified, pulling Bimala ever deeper into the swirling currents of political and personal conflict. The Zamindar's household, once a place of quiet routine and domestic harmony, now echoed with the restless energy of a nation on the brink of transformation. Outside its walls, the Swadeshi movement surged forward with greater momentum. Inside, the lives of its inhabitants were caught in an intricate dance of passion, loyalty, and betrayal. Bimala's mind was a tempest of conflicting emotions. She found herself caught between the calm, rational love of her husband Nikhil and the thrilling, intoxicating presence of Sandip. The man she had long admired as a beacon of stability now seemed fragile against the backdrop of the political upheaval. Meanwhile, Sandip's fiery rhetoric and magnetic personality awakened in her a fierce desire to break free from the constraints imposed by tradition and convention. Sandip's visits to the Zamindar's estate became more frequent, and with each encounter, the invisible threads binding Bimala and Sandip grew stronger. Their conversations were charged with an intensity that transcended mere politics. They shared dreams of a new India, visions fueled by a passionate nationalism that promised liberation but demanded sacrifice. To Bimala, Sandip represented the future, a world bursting with possibility, yet shadowed by uncertainty. Yet beneath the surface of their fervent discussions lay a subtle, unspoken tension. Sandip's worldview was rigid and uncompromising. He saw the struggle for independence as a battlefield where every act, no matter how harsh, was justified in the name of the motherland. This single-minded pursuit often blinded him to the human cost of his actions. Bimala began to sense this in him, a restlessness that bordered on recklessness, a willingness to forsake compassion for the sake of ideology. Nikhil, aware of the growing influence Sandip had over Bimala, remained patient and steadfast. He understood the appeal of Sandip's passion, but he feared its danger. For Nikhil, true patriotism was not about fiery speeches or violent uprising, but about a thoughtful, inclusive vision that embraced change without sacrificing humanity. He believed that the home, the sanctuary of love, reason, and tradition, was the foundation upon which any genuine transformation must be built. Bimala, however, struggled to reconcile these two worlds. The home that once symbolized safety now felt like a cage. Her heart yearned for something more, an active participation in the shaping of her country's destiny. She found herself drawn to the gatherings and protests inspired by the Swadeshi movement, places where women like her could voice their hopes and frustrations. These meetings, often filled with speeches and songs, were charged with a sense of urgency and purpose that resonated deeply with her. Amidst this political awakening, Bimala's relationship with Sandip evolved beyond mere ideology. She found in him a kindred spirit, a man who spoke not only to her intellect, but also to her heart. Their connection was electric, a mixture of admiration, desire, and shared idealism. For Bimala, the world outside the home seemed to pulse with life and possibility when Sandip was near. Yet, with this growing closeness came an undercurrent of guilt and confusion. Bimala loved Nikhil deeply, and his quiet, unwavering support had always been her anchor. But Sandip's passion stirred a fire within her that she had never before acknowledged. The lines between loyalty to her husband and loyalty to her newfound beliefs began to blur, creating an emotional turmoil that left her feeling isolated and vulnerable. The Zamindar's household, too, reflected these fractures. The servants and relatives whispered about the changing dynamics, sensing the shift, but unable to fully grasp its depths. The once harmonious rhythms of daily life were disrupted by tension and uncertainty. Nikhil's calm demeanor masked the storm raging within him as he watched the woman he loved drift further away. Caught in the whirlwind of a political cause he viewed with wary skepticism, Tagore masterfully uses this domestic backdrop to highlight the larger ideological battle tearing through Indian society. The conflict between tradition and modernity, between cautious reform and radical revolution, plays out not only in the streets, but within the intimate spaces of the home. The characters embody these opposing forces. Nikhil representing reason, moderation, and ethical patriotism, while Sandip symbolizes fervor, idealism, and the seductive power of uncompromising nationalism. Bimala's journey is emblematic of the struggle many Indians faced during this period: how to balance personal desires and familial responsibilities with the demands of a nation fighting for freedom. Her transformation is both inspiring and tragic, illustrating the cost of awakening in a world fraught with complexity and contradiction. As the political climate grew more volatile, so did the tensions within the household. Sandip's rhetoric became increasingly radical, urging bold actions and sacrifices that unsettled even his closest followers. Bimala found herself torn between the idealistic visions Sandip painted and the practical, humanistic approach Nikhil advocated. The chasm between the two men and the philosophies they represented widened with every passing day. One pivotal evening, a confrontation quietly unfolded between the three, a moment pregnant with unspoken truths and suppressed emotions. Nikhil, with his gentle firmness, implored Bimala to reconsider her involvement with Sandip's movement. He warned her of the dangers inherent in blind fanaticism and the potential destruction it could wreak on their lives and society. Sandip, meanwhile, dismissed Nikhil's caution as weakness, seeing only the urgency of the cause and the need for unwavering commitment. Caught between these two powerful men, Bimala felt the weight of history pressing down upon her. The personal and political were inseparably intertwined, each influencing the other in ways that were both beautiful and devastating. She realized that the choices she made in this crucible of change would not only shape her own destiny, but also echo through the lives of those around her. The novel's exploration of these themes, love and betrayal, idealism and pragmatism, freedom and responsibility, reaches new depths here. Tagore does not offer easy answers or clear heroes. Instead, he presents flawed, deeply human characters navigating a world in flux. Bimala's internal struggle reflects the broader national crisis, a metaphor for India itself, caught between the warmth of the familiar home and the vast, uncertain world outside. As she grapples with these conflicting forces, Bimala grows more aware of her own strength and agency. She begins to question not only the men who influence her, but also the societal norms that have confined her for so long. Her awakening is both political and personal, a journey towards self-discovery and empowerment. Yet, the path forward is fraught with peril. The boundaries between right and wrong, loyalty and betrayal, patriotism and selfishness become increasingly blurred. The home, once a refuge, now feels like a battleground where ideals clash and hearts break. The world outside, with its promises of freedom, carries its own dangers: violence, fanaticism, and the loss of innocence. Through Bimala's eyes, readers witness the complexities of a nation on the cusp of transformation. Her story is a poignant reminder that the fight for freedom is never just political. It is deeply personal, touching the core of human relationships and identity. In the delicate interplay between the home and the world, Tagore captures the eternal struggle to find balance amidst chaos. The fragile equilibrium within the Zamindar's household continued to unravel as Bimala's involvement with Sandip deepened, and the political storm outside grew fiercer. The idyllic world that once surrounded her one, defined by gentle routines and the steady rhythms of family life, had given way to a complex and volatile landscape where loyalty was questioned, and the very meaning of patriotism was fiercely debated. Bimala's heart was a battleground of its own. Each day brought fresh turmoil as her affection for Nikhil, her husband's calm rationality, was tested against the fiery allure of Sandip's charisma and radical vision. This internal conflict was not just about two men. It symbolized the larger ideological struggle tearing through India, a nation struggling to reconcile its ancient traditions with the urgent call for freedom and change. Sandip's presence had awakened in Bimala a sense of vitality and purpose she had never known before. His impassioned speeches about the motherland stirred her soul, filling her with a fiery zeal and the intoxicating belief that she could be part of something larger than herself. Sandip did not merely speak of independence. He demanded it with an intensity that left no room for doubt or hesitation. To him, compromise was defeat, and every moment not spent fighting was a moment wasted. This uncompromising zeal began to seep into Bimala's thoughts and actions. She found herself increasingly drawn to the Swadeshi movement's protests and meetings, eager to immerse herself in a world that valued courage and sacrifice above comfort and tradition. The private sphere of the home seemed to shrink, its familiar walls confining her instead of protecting. The world outside beckoned with the promise of transformation, and she longed to embrace it fully. However, beneath this fervor lay a growing unease. Sandip's rhetoric, though inspiring, often veered toward the extreme. His vision of nationalism was exclusionary and aggressive, demanding absolute loyalty to the cause, sometimes at the expense of empathy and understanding. To Bimala, this began to feel like a dangerous edge, a place where passion threatened to become fanaticism. Nikhil, ever the voice of reason, watched this transformation with a mixture of sorrow and concern. His love for Bimala was steadfast and gentle, grounded in a belief that true patriotism must include compassion and respect for all. He had always envisioned India's future as one built on education, tolerance, and moral strength, rather than violence or blind fervor. To him, the home was not a cage, but a sanctuary where love and reason could coexist, providing the foundation for lasting change. One afternoon, as the golden light of dusk spilled through the windows of their home, a significant conversation unfolded between Bimala and Nikhil. He spoke softly but firmly, urging her to consider the consequences of the path she was walking. He reminded her that the freedom they all sought could not be achieved through hatred or division, and that the strength of a nation lay in its ability to unite, not to tear itself apart. Bimala listened, torn between her admiration for Nikhil's wisdom and the intoxicating allure of Sandip's revolutionary spirit. She saw in Nikhil the security of the familiar, the warmth of home, and the promise of a future grounded in ethical principles. Yet Sandip's world, vibrant and tumultuous, called to the restless parts of her soul, promising an existence filled with meaning and heroic purpose. This duality mirrored the larger conflict raging in Indian society, the tension between the old and the new, between gradual reform and radical upheaval. Tagore used this domestic drama to symbolize the nation's struggle, portraying the home as both a place of comfort and a site of ideological contestation. The intimate choices of his characters echoed the monumental decisions facing a country on the edge of history. As days turned into weeks, Bimala's involvement with Sandip's circle deepened. She became more than just a passive observer. She was an active participant in the movement, embracing its ideals and challenges. But with this newfound agency came risk. The revolutionary path was perilous, fraught with the dangers of betrayal, disillusionment, and moral compromise. Sandip's influence over Bimala grew stronger, but cracks began to appear in his idealized image. His confident exterior sometimes gave way to moments of arrogance and insensitivity. He was quick to dismiss opposing views, and his passion could veer into impatience and intolerance. These flaws troubled Bimala, but her admiration for him remained steadfast, complicated by the emotional connection they shared. Meanwhile, Nikhil's quiet strength became a source of both comfort and sorrow. He refused to confront Bimala with anger or reproach, instead choosing to embody the virtues he believed India must nurture: compassion, understanding, and hope. His presence was a silent plea for balance, urging Bimala to find a way to reconcile her divided loyalties without losing herself. The tension between these two men and the ideals they represented came to a head during a critical moment when Sandip's radical faction planned an act of defiance that threatened to escalate violence. Bimala found herself caught in the eye of this storm, her loyalty to Sandip tested against her innate sense of right and wrong. This event forced Bimala to confront the consequences of her choices more directly than ever before. She realized that the cause she believed in was not immune to moral ambiguity. The line between heroism and fanaticism, between patriotism and selfish ambition, was thinner than she had imagined. The idealism that once inspired her now carried a weight of responsibility and guilt. Tagore's narrative here is both deeply personal and profoundly political. He explores the complexities of human emotion set against the backdrop of a nation striving for freedom. Bimala's internal struggle is a mirror for India's own conflict, a poignant meditation on the cost of change and the price of loyalty. As the novel progresses, the characters' lives become increasingly intertwined with the turbulent political landscape. The home and the world collide, revealing the fragile connections between personal happiness and national destiny. Bimala's story is not just about love and betrayal, but about the search for identity in a time of upheaval. The portrayal of Bimala's transformation is nuanced and compelling. She moves from a sheltered, obedient wife to a woman who challenges the constraints of her environment, seeking to forge a new path for herself and her country. Yet her journey is marked by uncertainty and pain, reminding readers that awakening is rarely without cost. Through the interactions between Bimala, Nikhil, and Sandip, Tagore delves into themes of power, ideology, and morality. He questions the nature of leadership and the responsibilities it entails. Sandip's charismatic authority is seductive, but ultimately unstable, while Nikhil's principled approach demands patience and resilience. The novel's tension builds as these opposing forces clash, not only in the public arena, but within the intimate confines of the home. The characters embody the contradictions and challenges faced by a society on the verge of transformation. Bimala's evolving understanding of love and patriotism reaches a critical juncture as she grapples with her own complicity in the unfolding drama. Her story forces readers to consider the limits of idealism and the sacrifices demanded by conviction. In this delicate balance between the home and the world, Rabindranath Tagore masterfully captures the essence of a nation's struggle through the lens of personal experience. The novel remains a timeless exploration of the human heart and the complexities of change, inviting readers to reflect on the meaning of freedom, loyalty, and self-discovery. As the story progresses, the fragile threads holding together the lives of Bimala, Nikhil, and Sandip begin to fray under the immense pressure of the political and personal storms surrounding them. Bimala's once clear sense of right and wrong blurs amid the competing forces of love, loyalty, and ideology. Her internal conflict intensifies, revealing the deeper complexities of her character and the broader societal tensions that Tagore explores so masterfully. Bimala is no longer the timid woman who sat quietly behind the walls of her husband's mansion. The fire Sandip ignited within her has transformed her into someone who questions, challenges, and acts. She ventures into the world beyond the home, engaging directly with the Swadeshi movement's fervor. Yet, with every step she takes deeper into Sandip's realm, she also risks losing the stability and affection that Nikhil embodies. The growing polarization between the two men reflects the ideological crossroads at which India stood during the early 20th century. Sandip's passionate nationalism is uncompromising and, at times, dangerously aggressive. He embodies the spirit of rebellion and radical change, willing to push boundaries and embrace conflict as a means to an end. His fiery rhetoric appeals to those who feel that drastic measures are necessary to break the chains of colonial rule. To him, any sacrifice is justified for the cause, and his vision of patriotism leaves little room for nuance or dissent. Nikhil, by contrast, represents a more measured, enlightened approach. His patriotism is tempered with reason, compassion, and a profound respect for human dignity. He believes that true freedom cannot be achieved through hatred or violence, but through moral strength and unity. Nikhil's worldview is one where progress is gradual, ethical, and inclusive. This philosophical divide between the two men is at the heart of the novel's exploration of nationalism and its pitfalls. Bimala's position between these two men symbolizes the common individual caught in the turbulence of history. Her emotional journey is entwined with her political awakening, yet it is also fraught with confusion, fear, and moral ambiguity. She admires Sandip's courage and passion, but also senses the dangers in his uncompromising stance. At the same time, she values Nikhil's steadiness and kindness, but sometimes finds his caution limiting and uninspiring. One of the defining moments in this phase of the narrative comes when Bimala is drawn into Sandip's circle in a more active role, participating in the clandestine efforts to promote Swadeshi goods and resist the British Raj's economic grip. This involvement is thrilling and empowering for her, offering a new sense of purpose beyond the domestic sphere. She relishes the excitement and significance of these activities, feeling that she is contributing meaningfully to the nation's struggle. Yet, the thrill is shadowed by the realization that Sandip's methods are not without consequence. The movement's rhetoric increasingly borders on intolerance and coercion, with the threat of violence looming over their gatherings. Bimala witnesses firsthand the emotional and physical toll that fanaticism can exact, both on individuals and communities. This growing awareness plants seeds of doubt and unease within her. Meanwhile, Nikhil's quiet opposition to Sandip's radicalism becomes more pronounced. He confronts the swelling tide of violence and hatred with unwavering dignity, advocating for dialogue and understanding. His efforts to maintain peace and ethical integrity are often met with frustration and even hostility by those who see him as weak or naive. Yet, he remains resolute in his belief that the means are as important as the ends. The tension between the home and the world becomes painfully evident as the ideological conflict seeps into the intimate space of Bimala and Nikhil's marriage. Conversations once warm and reassuring grow strained, filled with unspoken accusations and sorrow. Bimala wrestles with guilt, torn between her loyalty to her husband and her admiration for Sandip. The sanctuary of the home no longer feels safe. It has become a battleground of ideas and emotions. Sandip's presence looms larger than ever in Bimala's life, both inspiring and troubling her. His charisma and idealism mask a ruthless streak that becomes clearer with time. He is a man driven by his convictions, but also by his ego and hunger for power. His willingness to manipulate emotions and circumstances for the sake of the cause unsettles Bimala, even as she clings to the hope that his vision will prevail. A particularly poignant episode unfolds when Bimala secretly aids Sandip in a daring plan to smuggle prohibited goods as part of the Swadeshi boycott. This act of rebellion fills her with a heady mix of fear and exhilaration, yet it also forces her to confront the moral compromises she is making. She is no longer a passive bystander, but an active agent in a struggle that demands courage, but also calls into question the boundaries of right and wrong. Throughout these events, Tagore's nuanced portrayal of Bimala's psychological landscape invites readers to empathize with her contradictions and struggles. She embodies the universal human experience of growth through conflict, how ideals, desires, and realities collide to shape identity. Her journey is both deeply personal and emblematic of the nation's own search for selfhood amid colonial oppression. Nikhil's character continues to shine as a beacon of integrity and calm. His love for Bimala is steadfast, yet he respects her autonomy, refusing to impose his will. This dynamic adds a profound layer of emotional complexity to the narrative. Their relationship challenges traditional notions of marriage and gender roles, suggesting that true partnership requires understanding and respect, even in the face of disagreement. The wider political landscape of Bengal, marked by the Swadeshi movement's rise and the violent clashes with colonial authorities, provides a vivid backdrop to the unfolding drama. Tagore captures the fervor and fear gripping the people, from the idealistic youth to the wary elders. The social and economic impact of the boycott, the fervent speeches, and the street protests all serve to heighten the novel's tension and urgency. Amidst this turmoil, Tagore's critique of extremist nationalism becomes increasingly apparent. He cautions against the seductive danger of fanaticism disguised as patriotism, highlighting how such fervor can lead to destruction rather than liberation. Through Sandip's character, Tagore warns of the risks inherent in blind loyalty to ideology, especially when it dismisses compassion and reason. Bimala's evolving perspective is a microcosm of this warning. She begins to see the cracks in Sandip's grand vision and the human cost of his uncompromising stance. Her disillusionment is gradual but profound, marking a turning point in her emotional and political awakening. As the narrative reaches this critical juncture, the intertwined destinies of the three central characters reflect the complex interplay of personal desire and historical forces. Bimala's journey, with its moments of courage, doubt, and awakening, stands as a powerful meditation on the challenges of freedom, both personal and national. In sum, this section deepens the novel's exploration of identity, loyalty, and the moral dilemmas faced by individuals in times of upheaval. The home and the world are no longer separate realms, but intersecting spaces where ideals and realities clash, shaping the course of lives and nations alike. The tensions that have been quietly building now begin to surface more openly, shaking the foundation of Bimala's world and deepening the ideological and emotional chasms between the three central figures. The political fervor surrounding the Swadeshi movement becomes impossible to ignore, and the personal consequences of the choices made by Bimala, Nikhil, and Sandip weigh heavily on each of them. Bimala finds herself increasingly caught between two opposing forces, both powerful and compelling in their own right. Sandip's vision of an unyielding, assertive nationalism continues to captivate her. His fiery speeches, bold actions, and unshakable confidence stir in her a desire to break free from the constraints of tradition and mediocrity. She is drawn to the promise of transformation that Sandip embodies, not just for the country, but for herself. The world outside her home, once intimidating and foreign, has begun to glow with new possibilities and thrilling danger. Yet, with each step deeper into Sandip's world, Bimala's conscience wrestles with doubt and unease. The line between patriotism and fanaticism blurs, and she begins to sense the dark undercurrents beneath Sandip's rhetoric. His willingness to use fear, intimidation, and manipulation to achieve his goals unsettles her. Moments of exhilaration are shadowed by whispers of guilt and regret. Her initial idealism is tempered by the reality of human flaws and the moral compromises demanded by political zeal. Meanwhile, Nikhil's quiet presence at home becomes a source of both comfort and sorrow. His steadfast devotion and calm rationality offer a counterpoint to Sandip's tempestuous energy. Nikhil's belief in ethical progress and human dignity is unwavering, yet he is painfully aware of his own limitations in influencing the rising tide of extremism. He watches Bimala's growing involvement in Sandip's cause with a mixture of concern and respect, recognizing her right to choose her path, but fearing the consequences. The contrast between Nikhil and Sandip grows starker as the narrative unfolds. Nikhil's patriotism is rooted in inclusivity, compassion, and reason. He envisions a future where freedom is achieved not through violence or hatred, but through understanding and moral courage. His view embraces the complexity of human nature and the need for patience and dialogue. In contrast, Sandip's vision is uncompromising and polarizing, demanding immediate and total allegiance. His patriotism flirts dangerously with intolerance, often disregarding individual suffering in pursuit of a collective ideal. This ideological rift reflects the broader tensions in Indian society at the time, where diverse voices and visions competed for prominence. Tagore's portrayal is nuanced, avoiding simplistic binaries. Both men represent legitimate but conflicting responses to colonial oppression, and their conflict reveals the deep challenges faced by a nation struggling to define its identity. Bimala's emotional turmoil mirrors this national crisis. Her heart is torn between the magnetic allure of Sandip's idealism and the steady warmth of Nikhil's love. The freedom she glimpses outside the home is intoxicating, yet the safety and affection she knows within the home remain profoundly important. Her struggle is not just about political allegiance, but about self-discovery, autonomy, and the cost of freedom. A pivotal moment occurs when Bimala confronts Sandip about his methods and motivations. Her courage in questioning him reveals her growth, but also exposes the fractures in their relationship. Sandip, unaccustomed to dissent, responds with a mixture of frustration and condescension, unable or unwilling to see the validity of her concerns. This exchange highlights the dangers of absolutism and the need for empathy in political movements. At the same time, Nikhil's efforts to maintain peace and uphold his principles become increasingly challenging. He faces criticism and isolation, labeled as weak or out of touch by those swept up in the revolutionary fervor. Yet, he remains firm, embodying the ideal of moral strength through humility and patience. His character serves as a quiet rebuke to the excesses of fanaticism and a reminder of the human cost of political conflict. The novel's setting, the lush, serene Bengali countryside and the comfortable, yet confining home, contrasts sharply with the turmoil of the world beyond. Tagore uses this contrast to underscore the tension between tradition and change, safety and risk, private life and public duty. The home, once a sanctuary, becomes a stage for ideological battles and personal betrayals. The physical and emotional walls that separate the characters begin to crumble under the weight of competing loyalties. Amidst this turmoil, Bimala's internal voice grows stronger. She becomes increasingly reflective, questioning not only the men who shape her life, but the ideals they champion. Her journey is a profound exploration of freedom, what it means to be free, what sacrifices it demands, and how it can be both empowering and isolating. Bimala's awakening challenges the conventional roles assigned to women in her society, presenting a woman grappling with autonomy in a world dominated by patriarchal expectations. Tagore's narrative deftly captures the complexity of these dynamics without resorting to simplistic judgments. Bimala's flaws, strengths, and contradictions are portrayed with empathy, making her a deeply human and relatable figure. Through her eyes, readers experience the exhilaration and the anguish of transformation, personal and political. Meanwhile, Sandip's charismatic yet ruthless leadership of the Swadeshi movement begins to show signs of strain. His uncompromising stance alienates potential allies and fuels conflict within the community. The the idealistic movement's descent into violence and coercion is portrayed with sober realism, cautioning against the seductive danger of extremist nationalism. Sandip's character becomes a tragic figure whose passion and ambition ultimately undermine the very cause he seeks to advance. Nikhil, by contrast, increasingly embodies the novel's moral center. His refusal to compromise on ethical principles, even in the face of political pressure and personal loss, underscores Tagore's critique of blind fanaticism. Nikhil's calm dignity and respect for human dignity offer a vision of patriotism that is both hopeful and humane. As the personal and political conflicts escalate, Bimala's role becomes more complex and fraught. She moves from a passive observer to an active participant in the unfolding drama, but her participation is marked by ambivalence and inner conflict. Her decisions carry weighty consequences, not only for herself, but for the men she loves and the society they inhabit. Throughout this phase of the story, the theme of the home versus the world remains central. The home represents tradition, security, and intimate relationships, while the world symbolizes change, risk, and public action. Bimala's journey reflects the tension between these spheres, illustrating how individuals navigate the demands of loyalty, love, and conscience in turbulent times. The narrative's emotional intensity deepens as Bimala grapples with her shifting sense of identity and belonging. Her evolving relationship with both men embodies the broader struggle between competing visions of India's future. The novel does not offer easy answers, but invites readers to consider the complexities of freedom, patriotism, and human nature. In sum, this section of the story delves into the heart of the novel's exploration of conflicting ideals and the personal costs of political passion. The characters' struggles illuminate the challenges faced by individuals caught in the sweep of history, and Tagore's masterful storytelling makes their journeys resonate deeply. As the currents of political unrest intensify, the fragile equilibrium that held Bimala's world together begins to shatter in ways she never anticipated. The Swadeshi movement, once a passionate but somewhat abstract cause, now erupts into a fierce and tangible force, sweeping through villages and towns, transforming friends into foes and calm into chaos. Bimala, caught between two men who embody drastically different visions of patriotism, finds herself at the center of a storm she can neither fully control nor easily escape. Her relationship with Sandip grows increasingly complex. The initial thrill of his boldness and charisma begins to give way to a deeper awareness of the consequences of his ideology. Sandip's passionate speeches and stirring calls to action, once invigorating and inspiring, now reveal a darker edge, one that relies on manipulation, intimidation, and even violence to achieve its ends. Bimala's awakening to these realities is painful. She watches as the ideals she once admired become twisted, used as tools to suppress dissent and silence opposition. Despite these troubling signs, Bimala cannot deny the magnetic pull Sandip has on her spirit. His unwavering conviction challenges her, pushing her beyond the confines of the traditional life she has known. With Sandip, she experiences an intoxicating sense of purpose and belonging that contrasts starkly with the restrained and gentle world of her husband, Nikhil. Yet, alongside this excitement, a gnawing sense of guilt and confusion takes root. She struggles to reconcile her growing admiration for Sandip's fervor with the unsettling tactics he employs and the personal toll they exact. Nikhil's response to the escalating turmoil remains consistent with his character, calm, principled, and deeply compassionate. He watches the political fervor around him with a mixture of sadness and resolve, determined to hold onto his belief in dialogue, understanding, and ethical progress. Though his quiet demeanor contrasts with Sandip's fiery oratory, Nikhil's strength lies in his integrity and unwavering respect for human dignity. He refuses to be drawn into the violence and extremism that threaten to engulf the movement and the community. The emotional distance between Bimala and Nikhil widens as the political divide grows. Nikhil's cautious approach and moral steadfastness are increasingly overshadowed by the intoxicating and aggressive nationalism Sandip advocates. Bimala's involvement in Sandip's cause deepens, causing her to question not only the values she was raised with, but also her own identity and desires. The safe and familiar confines of her home, once a sanctuary, now feel restrictive, even suffocating. This growing estrangement highlights the novel's exploration of personal freedom versus societal expectations. Bimala's journey is emblematic of a woman navigating the difficult terrain of self-discovery amid the clash of tradition and modernity. Her internal conflict between loyalty to her husband and fascination with Sandip mirrors the larger conflict tearing through the country. The home and the world are no longer separate spheres, but overlapping realms fraught with tension and contradiction. As events unfold, Bimala becomes more deeply involved in the political activities associated with Sandip's faction of the Swadeshi movement. Her participation brings both empowerment and danger. She gains a sense of agency previously denied to her by the conventions of her social milieu. But this newfound freedom also exposes her to risks and moral compromises. Bimala's transformation challenges the prescribed roles for women in early 20th century Bengali society, revealing the possibilities and perils of stepping beyond traditional boundaries. Amid this turmoil, Bimala's reflections grow more profound. She begins to question the true meaning of patriotism and the cost it demands. Is the love for one's country worth the sacrifice of compassion, reason, and personal integrity? Is the world beyond the home truly a realm of freedom, or does it demand its own forms of bondage? These questions haunt her, driving a wedge between her and Sandip, whose vision leaves little room for doubt or hesitation. Meanwhile, the effects of the political upheaval ripple through Bimala's social circle and household. Friends and acquaintances take sides, loyalties shift, and trust erodes. The social fabric of the community is strained to breaking point, revealing fractures not only in political allegiance, but also in human relationships. The novel captures this breakdown with a poignant sense of loss and inevitability, underscoring how public passions can devastate private lives. Nikhil's quiet suffering remains a powerful counterpoint to the rising tide of fanaticism. Though marginalized by the more vocal nationalists, his commitment to justice and humanity never wavers. He continues to offer Bimala a model of love rooted in respect and empathy, even as she drifts further into Sandip's orbit. Nikhil's character embodies the possibility of a patriotism that honors individual conscience and ethical responsibility. The narrative also delves deeper into Sandip's contradictions. His charm and eloquence mask a ruthless pragmatism that prioritizes victory over virtue. The idealism he initially espouses gives way to a willingness to exploit fear, superstition, and violence as tools of political power. Sandip's personality reveals the dangers inherent in any ideology that refuses to tolerate dissent or recognize the complexity of human motives. Bimala's growing disillusionment with Sandip coincides with a personal reckoning. She confronts the consequences of her choices, how her involvement in political intrigue has altered her relationships and challenged her sense of self. The novel's intimate portrayal of Bimala's psychological landscape illuminates the human costs of political fanaticism, especially for women who bear the burden of divided loyalties. Amid these tensions, moments of tenderness and humanity shine through, reminding readers of the enduring bonds that connect the characters despite their conflicts. Bimala's love for Nikhil remains a source of strength and sorrow, a complex and evolving emotion shaped by their shared history and divergent paths. These moments of quiet intimacy provide a necessary balance to the larger ideological battles raging around them. Tagore's storytelling remains masterful in its ability to weave personal drama with political commentary. The characters' struggles are never isolated from the social and historical context, but are deeply embedded within it. The novel critiques the allure of extremist nationalism, while honoring the earnest aspirations of those who seek freedom and justice. It invites readers to reflect on the tensions between idealism and pragmatism, between the demands of the collective and the rights of the individual. As the story advances, Bimala's sense of self becomes increasingly complex and nuanced. She is neither simply a victim nor a hero, but a fully realized human being grappling with contradictory desires and painful choices. Her journey is one of awakening, not only to political realities, but also to the inner landscapes of fear, hope, love, and regret. The contrast between the intimate world of the home and the turbulent world outside remains a central motif. The home, with its familiar routines and emotional safety, offers comfort, but also confinement. The world beyond, while promising excitement and possibility, demands sacrifice and exposes vulnerabilities. Bimala's navigation between these realms captures the universal human struggle to balance belonging with autonomy. Throughout this phase, the novel's themes of freedom, identity, and moral responsibility are further elaborated. Bimala's internal dialogue reflects the broader existential questions raised by the political crisis. What does it mean to be truly free? How can one remain true to oneself amid competing loyalties and harsh realities? These questions resonate beyond the specific historical moment, inviting timeless reflection. The rising action sets the stage for the inevitable climax, as the personal and political conflicts converge with increasing intensity. The novel's portrayal of these intertwined dramas remains compelling and deeply human, refusing easy answers while offering profound insights into the nature of love, power, and patriotism. The tension in Bimala's life reaches a crescendo as the forces of political upheaval and personal betrayal intertwine in ways that are both heartbreaking and unavoidable. The once clear lines between love, loyalty, and ideology blur, and Bimala is forced to confront the consequences of her choices with a growing sense of dread and clarity. The world outside her home, with all its fervor and violence, crashes into the quiet sanctuary she once knew, forever altering the course of her existence. Sandip's influence over Bimala, which began as an intoxicating blend of passion and purpose, now reveals its corrosive underside. His unyielding belief in the righteousness of the Swadeshi movement blinds him to the human costs that his political ambitions exact. Sandip's rhetoric becomes increasingly strident, his tactics more ruthless, and his willingness to manipulate even those closest to him more evident. Bimala watches, with mounting unease, as the movement's noble ideals are subverted by fanaticism and greed. This disillusionment is painful and isolating. Bimala, once swept up in the excitement of nationalist fervor, now wrestles with feelings of betrayal, not just by Sandip, but by the cause itself. She begins to see how the very movement she had hoped would bring freedom and dignity instead fosters suspicion, division, and violence. Her involvement becomes a source of inner conflict as she realizes the widening gulf between her moral compass and Sandip's ambitions. The impact of this growing schism extends beyond the political arena into the intimate spaces of Bimala's life. Her marriage to Nikhil, marked by a quiet strength and genuine affection, bears the strain of unspoken tensions and fractured trust. Nikhil, ever patient and understanding, senses Bimala's turmoil, but struggles to reach her across the chasm that Sandip's presence has created. The home, once a place of warmth and mutual respect, becomes a site of emotional distance and silent questions. Despite the strain, Nikhil remains a beacon of reason and compassion. His approach to the nationalist cause stands in stark contrast to Sandip's extremism. Nikhil's belief in progress through education, dialogue, and ethical action represents an alternative path, one that values human dignity above victory at any cost. This ideological difference between the two men symbolizes the larger debate raging within India at the time, between violent upheaval and measured reform. Bimala's inner conflict reaches its peak as she confronts the reality of Sandip's actions, which grow increasingly intolerant and self-serving. Sandip's manipulation of fear and hatred to rally support alienates many, including Bimala herself. She begins to question whether her love for him was ever truly about the man, or simply an infatuation with the idea of revolutionary change. This painful recognition forces her to reevaluate her own beliefs and desires. Amid this turmoil, Bimala's sense of identity becomes more sharply defined. She recognizes that her quest for freedom cannot be divorced from the ethical considerations that govern her actions. Her awakening is not just political, but deeply personal, as she grapples with the consequences of choices that have brought pain to those she loves. This journey toward self-awareness is fraught with sorrow, but also with the possibility of redemption. The novel deepens its exploration of the roles and limitations placed on women in the context of both tradition and political activism. Bimala's experience highlights the complex ways in which women navigate power structures that seek to both mobilize and constrain them. Her participation in the Swadeshi movement offers a glimpse of empowerment, yet it also exposes her to exploitation and moral ambiguity. The tension between agency and vulnerability is central to her story. The community around Bimala reacts to the escalating political tensions with a mixture of fear, excitement, and suspicion. The social fabric, once tightly woven, begins to fray under the pressures of ideology and violence. Friends and neighbors take sides, and alliances shift unpredictably. The novel captures the ripple effects of national unrest on personal relationships, revealing how public conflicts often have private casualties. Bimala's relationship with Sandip deteriorates as his true nature becomes harder to ignore. His disregard for the consequences of his actions and his readiness to sacrifice others for the cause clash with Bimala's emerging sense of morality. Their passionate connection, once a source of exhilaration, turns into a source of pain and disillusionment. Bimala's heartbreak reflects the broader tragedy of a movement that loses its way amid competing ambitions. Meanwhile, Nikhil's quiet dignity stands as a testament to enduring values in a time of chaos. His steadfast commitment to nonviolence, truth, and respect for individual conscience offers a stark contrast to the tumultuous world outside. Though marginalized and at times dismissed, Nikhil's perspective embodies a hopeful vision of patriotism grounded in humanity rather than dogma. The home, with its echoes of tradition and stability, continues to play a pivotal role in Bimala's journey. It represents both a refuge and a prison, a space where love and conflict coexist. As the external world grows more volatile, the significance of the home intensifies, symbolizing the enduring need for compassion and understanding amid upheaval. Bimala's evolving perspective also brings into focus the novel's critique of blind nationalism. Tagore challenges the assumption that love of country justifies any means. Through Bimala's eyes, readers see the dangers of fanaticism and the importance of preserving ethical boundaries. The narrative warns against allowing ideology to overshadow empathy and reason. This phase of the story is marked by moments of intense introspection. Bimala reflects on her motivations, her loyalties, and the consequences of her actions. She contemplates the fragile balance between duty to one's nation and duty to one's conscience. These reflections deepen the novel's philosophical richness and emotional resonance. The personal becomes political, and the political becomes personal, as Bimala's story unfolds against the backdrop of India's struggle for independence. The novel captures the complexities of this historical moment, illustrating how grand ideals can both inspire and destroy. Bimala's journey embodies the hopes, fears, and contradictions of a nation in turmoil. As the narrative progresses, the impending crisis looms larger. The intersections of love, power, and ideology set the stage for decisions that will irrevocably change the characters' lives. The story's tension is heightened by the knowledge that the pursuit of freedom often demands painful sacrifices. Through its vivid characterization and nuanced storytelling, the novel invites readers to engage deeply with the ethical dilemmas at its heart. Bimala's experiences challenge simplistic notions of right and wrong, inviting empathy and critical reflection. Her story resonates as a timeless exploration of human frailty and courage. In the midst of chaos and conflict, moments of quiet humanity shine through. These glimpses of tenderness and connection remind readers of the enduring power of love and hope, even in the darkest times. The novel balances its political critique with a profound appreciation for the complexities of human relationships. As the swirling currents of history and emotion converge, the narrative moves inexorably toward its climax. The decisions made in these moments will test the characters' convictions and reshape their destinies. The home and the world collide, revealing the profound challenges of living authentically in a fractured world. The tension that has been quietly building in Bimala's heart now erupts into a moment of profound reckoning, where the personal and political collide in an irreversible confrontation. The fragile threads holding together her relationships unravel as the true cost of loyalty, love, and ideology become painfully clear. The home, once a sanctuary of affection and shared ideals, now feels like a battleground where trust has been shattered and nothing can be taken for granted. Bimala's growing disillusionment with Sandip deepens as she uncovers the full extent of his duplicity. His charisma, which once seemed to embody the promise of a new India, is revealed as a mask for ambition and manipulation. Sandip's readiness to exploit fear and suspicion to achieve his goals exposes a darker side of nationalism, one that sacrifices morality for power. This realization crushes the idealism Bimala had clung to and forces her to face the harsh truth that the man she admired is capable of betrayal on multiple fronts. The revelation of Sandip's treachery is not only a political betrayal, but also a deeply personal wound. Bimala experiences a profound sense of loss, not just of a lover, but of the ideals and dreams that once animated her spirit. The betrayal cuts through the layers of her identity, leaving her to question her judgment and the nature of her own desires. This painful awakening is a turning point in her journey towards self-understanding and moral clarity. Meanwhile, Nikhil remains a steadfast figure of support and compassion. His love for Bimala, though wounded, endures with a quiet strength. Unlike Sandip's fiery rhetoric, Nikhil's approach is grounded in patience and forgiveness. His faith in dialogue and ethical principles offers Bimala a path toward healing and reconciliation, even as the world outside grows more chaotic and divided. Nikhil's character embodies the ideal of a patriot whose commitment to his country is inseparable from his respect for individual conscience and humanity. The broader political climate continues to deteriorate, mirroring the turmoil within Bimala's home. The Swadeshi movement, which began with hopes of peaceful resistance and economic self-sufficiency, has descended into factionalism and violence. The novel portrays this descent with stark realism, highlighting how noble causes can be corrupted by fanaticism and personal ambition. The rising violence in the streets and the deepening mistrust among communities reflect the fractured nature of India's struggle for independence. Amid this turmoil, Bimala's role becomes increasingly complex and precarious. Her initial enthusiasm for the nationalist cause has been replaced by a cautious and critical perspective. She recognizes the danger of blind allegiance and the importance of maintaining a moral compass, even in times of upheaval. Her journey is one of growing maturity and ethical awareness, as she learns to balance passion with prudence and idealism with realism. Bimala's inner conflict is heightened by the societal expectations placed upon her as a woman. Her actions are scrutinized not only through the lens of politics, but also through the constraints of tradition and gender roles. The novel critiques the limited space afforded to women in the nationalist movement, revealing how their contributions are often marginalized or instrumentalized. Bimala's experience underscores the broader struggles of women seeking agency in a patriarchal society undergoing radical change. The narrative also explores the theme of identity, both personal and national. Bimala's quest for selfhood parallels India's search for independence and self-definition. Her evolving consciousness reflects the tensions inherent in forging a new identity amid the legacies of colonialism, tradition, and modernity. This interplay between the individual and the collective enriches the novel's emotional and intellectual depth. As Bimala grapples with betrayal and loss, she also confronts the question of forgiveness. The tension between resentment and compassion plays out in her interactions with Sandip and Nikhil. Her struggle to reconcile her feelings highlights the novel's exploration of human fallibility and the possibility of redemption. Forgiveness emerges not as weakness, but as a courageous affirmation of hope and renewal. The home, which has borne witness to joy and sorrow, becomes a symbol of resilience and transformation. Despite the fractures and pain, it remains a place where love and understanding can be rebuilt. Bimala's decision to confront the truths about her relationships and her beliefs marks a step toward reclaiming her autonomy and dignity. This reclamation is portrayed with sensitivity and nuance, emphasizing the complexity of human emotions. The novel's portrayal of Sandip's downfall serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of fanaticism and unchecked ambition. His charismatic leadership, once inspiring, becomes a vehicle for destruction. The contrast between Sandip and Nikhil's approaches to patriotism offers a powerful commentary on the ethical choices facing a nation in crisis. Through these characters, Tagore interrogates the meaning of true freedom and the responsibilities it entails. The climax of the narrative is marked by moments of intense, emotional, and moral confrontation. Bimala's confrontation with Sandip forces both characters to face the consequences of their actions. The dialogue between them reveals the depth of their conflicting worldviews and the pain of broken trust. This confrontation is not merely a personal reckoning, but a reflection of the broader societal conflict tearing India apart. In the aftermath, Bimala's relationship with Nikhil gains new significance. Their renewed connection is built on honesty, respect, and shared values. The novel suggests that personal integrity and compassionate relationships are essential foundations for any meaningful political or social change. Bimala's journey toward reconciliation with Nikhil embodies a hopeful vision of unity and healing. The story also emphasizes the importance of individual conscience in times of collective struggle. Bimala's refusal to be swept away by extremist ideologies underscores the novel's advocacy for moral courage and critical thinking. Her experience serves as a reminder that patriotism must be tempered by empathy and a commitment to justice. Throughout the narrative, Tagore's prose captures the rich textures of Bengali life, blending the rhythms of domestic scenes with the larger sweep of historical events. The novel's vivid descriptions of the natural environment, cultural rituals, and intimate moments deepen the reader's immersion in the world of the characters. This layering of the personal and the political enhances the emotional impact of the story. The themes of love, betrayal, nationalism, and identity continue to resonate as the narrative moves toward its resolution. Bimala's story is a powerful meditation on the complexities of human relationships and the moral ambiguities of political struggle. The novel's enduring relevance lies in its ability to illuminate these timeless dilemmas with empathy and insight. As the story approaches its conclusion, the consequences of choices made by the characters become unavoidable. The narrative's tension remains taut, drawing readers into the emotional and ethical stakes at play. The home and the world remain entwined, symbolizing the inseparability of private lives and public history. In these final stages, Bimala's growth and transformation stand out as the novel's central achievement. Her journey from naive enthusiasm through disillusionment to a nuanced understanding of love and duty offers a profound exploration of human resilience. The novel ends not with easy answers, but with a recognition of the ongoing challenges of living authentically and ethically in a turbulent world. The concluding chapters of the story unfold with a profound sense of inevitability as the tangled threads of love, loyalty, and ideology come to their fateful resolution. Bimala's inner turmoil, once marked by confusion and divided allegiance, crystallizes into clarity as she confronts the full consequences of the choices she and those around her have made. The intimate world of the household and the vast, turbulent world of politics converge, revealing how deeply personal actions are intertwined with the fate of a nation. The arrest of Sandip marks a turning point in the narrative, and with it comes a sobering reckoning. His charismatic firebrand persona, which once stirred fervor and hope among the villagers, now lies in ruins. Sandip's downfall is portrayed with a mixture of pity and inevitability, reflecting the tragic consequences of zeal unchecked by conscience. His arrest is not just the fall of a man, but a symbolic collapse of the aggressive, divisive form of nationalism he championed, a nationalism that demanded loyalty at the cost of humanity and moral integrity. Bimala's response to Sandip's fate is complex and deeply human. The fiery passion that once drew her to him has been tempered by painful experience and reflection. Her love, tainted by betrayal, becomes a source of sorrow rather than strength. Yet, despite the heartbreak, she is not consumed by bitterness. Instead, Bimala emerges with a tempered wisdom, having learned that true patriotism must be rooted in compassion and respect for individual dignity. In contrast, Nikhil's presence in the story grows ever more significant. His steadfastness, his commitment to peaceful change, and his unwavering respect for Bimala's autonomy illuminate a path forward, both for her and for the country. Nikhil's quiet strength stands in stark relief to Sandip's flamboyant rhetoric. Through Nikhil, the narrative offers a vision of patriotism that embraces ethical principles and humanism, rejecting fanaticism and violence as means to political ends. The relationship between Bimala and Nikhil, tested and strained through the turmoil, ultimately serves as the novel's emotional anchor. Their reunion is not one of fairy tale reconciliation, but a careful, sincere rebuilding of trust. It is grounded in honesty and mutual respect, qualities that suggest hope for healing beyond political and personal betrayal. Bimala's renewed affection for Nikhil signals her full return to the home, a place of love, safety, and moral clarity, in contrast to the chaotic world of political strife. The novel's final scenes are suffused with a quiet dignity, as the characters face the aftermath of their actions and the changing realities of their country. The broader political struggle continues outside the walls of their home, with independence still an uncertain promise on the horizon. Yet, within their small, intimate world, a sense of peace and resolution begins to take hold. This contrast highlights the novel's enduring message that while political movements sweep across nations, the heart's truths and the values that sustain human relationships remain the foundation of any true freedom. Throughout these concluding moments, Tagore's prose evokes a profound sensitivity to the complexities of human emotion. The narrative lingers on Bimala's thoughts and feelings, capturing her growth from a sheltered wife to a woman who understands the costs of passion and the power of forgiveness. Her journey reflects a broader human experience, the painful yet necessary process of coming to terms with one's choices and learning to move forward with grace. The novel's ending also returns to the theme of identity, the interplay between the self and the nation. Bimala's transformation mirrors India's own path, fraught with conflict and contradiction, but ultimately seeking a synthesis of tradition and modernity, individual freedom and collective responsibility. The home she reclaims is symbolic of a reconciled self, just as the world she leaves behind suggests the possibility of a more just and humane society. One of the most striking aspects of the novel's conclusion is its refusal to offer simple answers or neat resolutions. Instead, it embraces ambiguity and complexity, acknowledging that human lives and national histories are shaped by conflicting desires and difficult compromises. The open-ended nature of the story invites readers to reflect on their own understandings of love, loyalty, and justice, and to recognize the ongoing challenges of building a better world. Tagore's critique of nationalism remains potent to the last page. By exposing the dangers of fanaticism and the seduction of demagoguery, the novel warns against losing sight of ethical principles in the pursuit of political goals. At the same time, it honors the deep yearning for freedom and dignity that fuels nationalist movements. This balanced perspective lends the novel a timeless relevance as societies around the world continue to wrestle with similar dilemmas. The home in the novel is much more than a physical space. It is a metaphor for the inner life and moral center that sustains individuals through turbulent times. Bimala's journey underscores the importance of nurturing this home within oneself and among loved ones, even as the external world threatens to engulf it. Her story champions the quiet but vital acts of love, understanding, and ethical reflection as the true foundation of any enduring social or political change. As the narrative closes, the reader is left with a sense of both resolution and possibility. Bimala's experiences offer a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of compassion to transcend division. Though the world remains fraught with conflict, the home stands as a beacon of hope, a place where healing and growth can begin anew. This final reflection encapsulates the novel's profound meditation on the intertwined fates of the individual and the nation, the personal and the political. Through the intimate story of Bimala, Nikhil, and Sandip, Tagore has crafted a work that is at once a love story, a political critique, and a philosophical inquiry into the meaning of freedom, identity, and responsibility. In closing, The Home and the World challenges its readers to look beyond the surface of political slogans and grand movements to the deeper ethical questions that shape human lives. It reminds us that the struggle for independence, like the struggle for selfhood, is never simply about power. It is about the choices we make in the face of fear and hope, betrayal and forgiveness, division and unity. And ultimately, it is about finding a home within ourselves and each other, even in the midst of a changing and uncertain world. As we reach the end of this profound journey through the home and the world, it becomes clear that Rabindranath Tagore's novel is much more than a story of love and political conflict. It is a timeless exploration of the complex interplay between personal identity and national destiny. Through the delicate, yet intense relationships of Bimala, Nikhil, and Sandip, Tagore masterfully probes the tensions between tradition and modernity, between passion and reason, and between individual conscience and collective fervor. The novel challenges us to think deeply about what it truly means to be patriotic, reminding us that genuine love for one's country cannot be divorced from compassion, humility, and respect for human dignity. Tagore's critique of aggressive nationalism remains strikingly relevant today, urging us to resist the allure of dogma and extremism in favor of empathy and ethical responsibility. At its heart, The Home and the World is also a meditation on the home as a metaphor for the self, a sanctuary of love, understanding, and moral clarity that sustains us amid the chaos of the outside world. Bimala's transformation from a sheltered, obedient wife to a woman who grapples honestly with her desires, doubts, and loyalties captures the universal struggle for self-realization and balance. This novel's rich layers of emotional nuance and philosophical insight invite readers and viewers alike to reflect on their own relationships with themselves, their loved ones, and their communities. It encourages us to recognize that the pursuit of freedom, whether personal or political, is never simple or straightforward. It demands courage, compassion, and above all, a readiness to embrace complexity without losing sight of our humanity. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of the home and the world. If you found this summary engaging and insightful, please like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into classic literature. Until next time, keep reading, keep reflecting, and keep finding your own balance between the home and the world.